Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Bancroft Brothers Animation Podcast.
Oh, yes, Tony.
I know it has been a week. We have had some really fun things going on, some podcast fun this week, and but none more than our next guest, because when you think of fun, you think of our
You
guests.
think of Max Ulichney. Ulichney.
Yeah,
I did it wrong.
welcome, Max.
Hey,
Hey,
you got it right in the end.
how bad did we butcher it? Say it for
Everybody
us.
gets it wrong. It's fine. It's kind of a point of pride at a certain point. So,
Yeah, Ulichney. Correct?
Ulichney, yes.
Ulichney. There it is.
Yes.
Tom, you
Thanks for
had
having
it in
me,
my
guys.
head.
I had it in my head, and then it just came out wrong.
It's
Just
all right.
like everything you say, Tony. Max, we were just off mic with you and asked you this really pertinent question. I want to hear you answer it again. Max, what did your parents, what's the full name here? Is it just Max or was it something else?
Maximilian.
It's just Max, but it was going to be Maxfield after Maxfield Parish.
Maxfield Parrish, the
Well, now-
amazing American illustrator.
I love
Yeah.
Maxfield Parrish. Now, were your parents illustrators? Is that why they knew who Maxfield Parrish was?
My dad's an artist, and he's, I'm sure, one of the main reasons I'm an artist today.
Oh man,
You're sure about that? You should. If anybody knew, I think you would know that.
Was
Yeah.
it because you kind of like grew up hating him and you wanted to get better than him to belittle him? Was that the whole idea?
That's pretty much it. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's
Was
why
he-
Tony's into art.
Was
Yeah.
he like Gene Hackman in Red Tide, and he was tough on you, like a commander in chief? I was just watching like Red. I don't know. I think it's called Red Tide with Denzel Washington.
Crimson
and-
Tide, Tony.
Crimson
Crimson
Tide.
Tide.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Crimson is a color, right? That is like red.
It is.
So, yeah. Was he a Gene Hackman? And he was like, straighten up, Max. I want you to draw me a straight line right now.
It's funny. We would do kind of academic studies when I was quite young. It wasn't like boot camp level. It wasn't Gene Hackman stuff, but it was really encouraging of young talent and kind of focusing, just raw interest, I guess. And so it was really fun to like, we would do, I don't remember the book, but it was kind of like traditional, academic study, the kind of stuff you might find in art schools, I guess. And we would like sketch eyes and mouths and noses and kind of drill down like that. I was learning perspective when I was like, I don't know, in grade school and stuff. So like we were doing like 2 and 3 point perspective years and years and years.
That's what I was going to ask. Is he
Never
like,
studied,
hey,
so I was like constructing
Max,
stuff.
let's go to the park and draw 3-point perspective. This will be
Won't
fun.
that be
It
fun?
sounds
Yeah. And you're like,
crazy,
Dad,
but
can't we
it
just
was.
throw around a ball just like everybody else?
I loved it. It was something because it felt like, I don't know, secret knowledge, or it felt mature. And I think I've always taken art really seriously and just loved it. And it feels like, it felt, like mature and kind of like a little secret society that I was learning insider knowledge of. It's kind of cool.
You always wanted
That's
to be a
cool.
grown-up, right?
Yeah, I
you
think
like-
especially as a kid, right?
Yeah.
Did your dad pull you aside and say, Max, let's talk about gouaches, all right? And he gave you a cigar, and you're sitting around like smoking cigars, talking about the gouache.
That is like a secret society.
That's what I thought
Kind
of.
yeah.
I
Oh
almost
my gosh.
drew a picture of that.
Tony and I would have joined your guys' society.
Yeah, little
Especially if
skull
it was
rings, right?
cigars.
Yeah. But we
Oh,
were probably
yeah.
like teenagers when you were 6, and so therefore we wouldn't have thought. It was
So, Tom, I got to do a little side for our listener. Hey, listener, listen up. So, you guys know Max because of who's on Instagram. Well, if you're on Instagram, you probably know Max. He's under Max Ulichney. Did I say it right again?
Yep.
Ulichney. And if you don't know him, well, he's got 121,000 followers that know him. So you need to join up. Check him out on Instagram. But Max is a primo illustrator, character designer in the animation community, done advertising work for many, many years, and done CG modeling. I can't wait to talk about that because that is so, to me, there's two heads of an artist. There's like that, I'm the CG model guy that is very technically based and all that kind of stuff. And then there's what I thought you were, Max, is this guy that was, a consummate artist, grew up with traditional media and stuff like that. now you're Mr. Digital to me. How did that all come about? Let us know.
Yeah, it's funny. I've always had a foot in both worlds. Like I said, growing up, of course, it was all about study and kind of traditional skills and things. But it was always kind of balanced against technology. And when I was, I don't know, 12 or 13, so my dad was in advertising. He teaches advertising now at SCAD.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this in fact is his, probably his
favorite podcast. Oh,
well,
what's his name?
His last year, Mick Ulichney.
Mick.
Yeah.
M-I-K.
M-I-C-K. Yeah.
M-I-C-K.
Oh, that
God.
Mick.
Like Mickey Mouse.
Like Mick Jagger, Tony. Stop it.
Oh, okay.
All right.
And so I remember at his agency, as a kid, I remember he brought us into the studio once, and he was like, "Hey, look at this. This is our computer." And so up until that point, they were making everything, all their layouts with, paper and marker and sending things out to be typeset. It was a very analog, traditional industry. And that launched them into a brand new phase where everything got consolidated down to the agency side rather than, having, outsourcing a whole bunch of things to finish work and everything else with illustrators and everything else. And so it was really fascinating. And I remember that making a really big impact on me. I remember seeing my first piece of clip art in Illustrator that day. And the girl on the computer changed the color from teal to purple. And everybody was like, "Do you believe that? That's ridiculous."
Yeah.
I'm not joking. To see people how excited they got about it was hilarious.
Yeah.
You know what? I just want to throw in. I grew up in that time. Well, Tony and I both did, obviously, but I worked at a print shop and back during high school. And
Sir Speedy Printing.
Sir Speedy, they're still around.
Remember?
I think.
Yeah.
Chain.
Wait, I had my CTN banner printed at Sir Speedy.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Maybe Tom printed it for you because he does it on the weekends.
I still work there. So anyway, but I was at this Sir Speedy in high school, and I remember that where there wasn't, and it was maybe right around that cusp of that time when personal computers were starting to come out, and the rich had them, and but this was a little local Sir Speedy. So what we would do is they'd write out the information that they wanted to be on this business card. They'd send it over to a typesetter who would then click, use their fancy machines and find the right font. You'd have to request the font and all that using these big books, go through, find the right font, and then that right size of type too. On top of that, if you screwed that up, then they'd have to redo it. And it would take days to just do a business card, literally from this, because then that type would come back. It would come to me, and I would find the right one and design it on a piece of paper with wax. I would literally wax the back of it and stick it on there, and so that we get
paste up. Yeah,
it was paste.
That's called paste up. Yeah,
amazingly low tech, and it would take days to just do your average. And these were the most boring. This was like a doctor's office, kind of a business card.
Sure.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, what an amazing thing that the computer has done for not only graphic design industry, of course, but now illustration. And that came later.
I know. Yeah.
But now you're one of the masters of it because you design brushes and ink brushes and pencil brushes. And can you tell me this? Why in Photoshop? Okay.
This is a pet peeve.
This is a pet peeve.
We have an old man pet peeve coming out.
There's a pencil tool, correct? And there's a brush tool.
Sure.
And when you click on the pencil tool, it is the worst tool in the world. And they still have it on there. No matter how many times the CS or Photoshop gets updated, they don't replace that. They don't get rid of it. They just keep it there, and it doesn't look like a pencil, doesn't act like a pencil. Nothing about it is like a pencil. It's like this digitized little dot thing. And yet I have to go to brushes and buy one of your brushes usually, and to get a real, a brush that looks like a pencil. And yet, so we call it a pencil, but it's really a brush.
I have an answer for you.
Please.
Ooh.
It's from early, first version of Photoshop. Basically, it was aliased, so no anti-aliasing, no smoothing of the edges.
Yep.
It's black or white only. And so the people who use that actually still currently, you would be surprised, are comic book artists traditionally, or for inkers and stuff, that often for digital inkers, because it's easier to select the edges of, like, to fill things, and then they work like, I don't know, twice as big as you would think, and then when you shrink it down, it anti-aliases for you. So it's an easier workflow. It is
really
a very narrow use case, but it is kind of a current use case.
So there are people that use it, and that's why they haven't gotten rid of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
it's
I'm
definitely
sure
rare, but for pixel art, that's what you'd use it for.
I'm sure if they had somebody like try it, some executive going, why do we have this pencil in here? Let's take it out and it'll make it run faster or whatever. And they probably tried to do it, and there would be riots.
Affect the speed of the.
The code is probably 20 years old, at least 25 years old, something like that.
Oh my
but yeah,
God.
you can imagine. I bet there's, for everything in Photoshop, there's probably like somebody that would riot and burn houses in the street if they took it out.
There's so much legacy stuff in there that really doesn't belong in there. Actually, that's part of the reason I'm in Procreate for most of my work these days. Is it's no shade against Photoshop. It's still a part of my life, as is everybody who works digitally. But Procreate, I think, is just really clever and stripped down and no bloat, and it's all just kind of a modern, fresh take on everything. And I just prefer it these days.
Well, since we're here, how did you get into, because you are well known for creating brushes and things like that for Photoshop, for Procreate.
For Procreate only, in fact.
Procreate only. And you sell them online, and I don't know what that business looks like. I'd love to just peel that back a little bit.
Sure,
Can you just how did you get into it?
I've interviewed Max before. It's fascinating. So yeah, please open up this can of worms.
I'm ready.
It's a funny story. I got into it reluctantly. It was kind of just the way I think of it is, well, I'll give you the quick early, I actually made my first brush the night I brought home my iPad Pro with the Apple Pencil.
Wow.
I had actually been using Procreate with a Bluetooth crappy stylus that, it did the job, but it was very compromised. And the Apple Pencil kind of changed the game, and I was really excited about it. I had tested it out at the Apple Store and used the Notes app, which had a good pencil in it. So you could tilt it over and it would kind of shade on the side and stuff and get all toothy and stuff. It was really cool. But Procreate's default brushes were fine. They're not, in the early days especially, they were pretty limited. They just weren't what I wanted necessarily. And that very first night, I set about making my first pencil to imitate the Notes pencil because I just liked it. I wanted something a little bit closer to that. And the rest is history. It just kind of I just would make a brush as I found that I had a gap, but I really liked the feeling of working in Procreate. So I just kept, I need a dry brush. So I would make a dry brush, and you just kind of get into the habit of it. And I would start posting work, and people would be like, what brushes are those? I was like, oh, they're mine. Don't worry about it. I don't want the hassle of selling them because it just sounded like a pain, or, what does it do to my taxes?
I hate making money too.
Well, but it didn't seem like, it seemed like, how hard am I going to have to work to make a couple bucks?
Right.
I didn't think they were going to sell anything.
I get that. Yeah.
It seemed like it would be mostly hassle.
I think of that too. They can't sell for a whole lot, right? But
yeah. So the first pack was first two were $5 and $10. And it was, they were fine. And, but then some talented artists kind of helped promote them for me. And, it just spread by word of mouth. I don't really advertise. It's all word of mouth. And so I just have a big install base and really awesome people using the brushes and helping get the word out. It's awesome.
Well, see, and Apple should be going around patting you on the back. They should be giving you.
Oh, Apple. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's for the iPad. Right.
Yeah.
We're talking about iPads, huh?
Well,
and Apple makes the iPad.
No, I get that. It's just Procreate is the company that he's making the brush.
Right.
Well, Procreate, I have sold a lot of iPads though, because I'm a huge advocate for, Procreate especially, but iPad drawing in general. And I've sold so many of my friends on iPads.
Okay. But now designing the brushes, it must have started, before you had an iPad. Were you doing that in Photoshop originally? How did you learn how to do that?
I've done them in Photoshop a little bit for, commercial jobs and things. I had to do an illustration of Chuck Norris made in tire tracks. He was doing burnouts in a truck for a commercial.
Nice.
And so I had to do a portrait of him with like burnouts. And so I made some brushes for that. You kind of like need stuff, you make stuff, right? But I never really got too much into it in Photoshop because I don't really love the way their brush engine works. It's just kind of a little bit blind and difficult. Mm-hmm. It obviously can be done. There's some people who make gorgeous brushes in it. It just was never my taste. And I would just use Kyle Webster's brushes.
Right.
So he was always kind of a model of, or an example of someone who can make a business out of it. So like, it never felt like it was off limits. And as I started to have a little bit of notoriety, I was like, oh, this is something that, is worth investing in. And then last year, my income from my brushes matched and exceeded my income from my staff job.
What?
So
there it is.
I'm fully invested in MaxPacks these days. That's my main job.
That's your main business.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And that happened to Kyle. I'm glad he brought up Kyle too, because I know that went wild for him. And I was one of those early guys getting the Kyle brushes and stuff when he was on his own. And
it feels great to support a fellow artist doing something like that. Right?
Oh my gosh. And I loved his art too. And so that's what I'm impressed with both you and Kyle, because you're not only great guys that know how to make great brushes, but then you're the best example of them in how you use them in your work. And it's just wonderful.
Be sure to subscribe to the Pencil-ish Studios YouTube channel.